Hey man.
Yeah?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Hey. I just want to let you guys know, you guys are awesome. I don't feel like people say that enough.
Totally. That's awesome.
Yeah.
See you, man.
Alright. Thanks, guys.
What is up, guys? So today we are back with another video diving deeper into the Rainbow Cup. Yep, I'm still saying it right. So today we're actually going to be looking at everybody's favorite flying lizard. Well, almost everyone. If you've been around the channel long enough, you know that Charizard. So today we're looking at Charizard, who is a fire and flying type Pokemon, maxing out at level 40 with 15s across the board. You do hit that 2889 CP, which is okay. That's not like ideal for the Great League, but hey, we can work with that. So getting a 0 on attack, 15 defense, and 13 stamina at 19.5 does yield you an exact 1500, which of course does keep us under that 1500 limit, while still getting us a large stat product out of our IV spread and our base stats. Now, according to my spreadsheets and all the numbers that I have ran, Charizard should be around 58th in bulk and 49th in stat product, which isn't really that great. But as we know, that doesn't necessarily dictate where we land in terms of like decentness in the meta. But of course, those numbers do come from our base stats here: a 223 on attack, 173 on defense, and a 186 on stamina. Here again, also not the best stat distribution for PvP, but hey, you know, it's either here that you really shine or here that you really shine. And if you shine in both areas, then you're just meta champ. So looking at our moves here, Charizard has quite the move pool. So in total, Charizard has 4 possible fast attacks and then 5 possible charge attacks. So let's actually go over the ones that I didn't write up here first. So in terms of the fast moves, the only ones that I didn't write up here were Ember and Air Slash. And the reason that we didn't write those up here is because they both have identical stats. And I do think that both Wing Attack and Fire Spin have a little something extra sprinkled into their recipe. So we may want to focus more on those two rather than the other two that are not quite like as good. Now, Wing Attack, of course, is a legacy move. Air Slash is the alternative at the moment, while Ember is the legacy move in the fire moves, and Fire Spin is the current move. So kind of take that into consideration. If you don't have Wing Attack, definitely want to be looking at Air Slash if you're going for that flying type move. If you don't have Ember, you want to go with Fire Spin, but honestly, Fire Spin is just objectively better in every way. Ember here is a 3 energy per turn for 3 damage per turn, which does get bumped up to 3.6 because of stab. And then Air Slash is the exact same at 3 energy per turn for 3.6 damage after stab. And I mean, honestly, Wing Attack is 3.5 energy, so it's already better there. It doesn't have the damage that the other ones do. It is only 2.5 before stab, 3 afterwards. And then Fire Spin is 3.33 energy per turn for the exact same damage. So Wing Attack helps us get to these charge moves faster if we're going for a flying move. It's the fastest move that we have. Fire Spin, it's the best fire damage move that we have, but Ember is literally the exact same damage, so it literally comes down to why not run Fire Spin, because it gives you more energy. So those two are the kind of fast moves that I feel like are really worthy talking about here. If you have Ember on your Charizard, I mean, I'm never going to tell you to get rid of a legacy move, but now in the charge move area, we do have 4 moves written here, so that means we only excluded 1. And the only one that we excluded was Fire Blast, which is an 80 cost for 140 damage at 1.75 damage per energy ratio. After stab, it does get bumped up to 168, which does total a 2.1 on the damage per energy ratio. The reason that we left this one out is because A, it's an extremely high cost. It's actually the exact same cost as Overheat. And B, its damage per energy ratio isn't even as good as Overheat. Overheat is just objectively better. It's kind of that Ember versus Fire Spin situation. It's almost the exact same, except Overheat's just better. So on to the moves that we actually have written up here in the charge move area. Dragon Claw, which is 35 energy for 50 damage at a 1.43. Of course, Charizard does not carry that dragon typing inside of just a regular Charizard, so we do not get a stab. Flamethrower is 55 energy for 90 damage at a 1.64. After you do bump up to stab, it is 108 for 1.96, which is pretty nice. Overheat here is 80 energy for 150 damage at a 1.88. After you bump up with stab, it is a 180 on the damage and a 2.25 on the damage per energy ratio. Then we do have Blast Burn here for 50 energy, 110 damage at a 2.20 damage per energy ratio with a 132 after stab, which does bump it up to a 2.64 on the damage per energy ratio. So the reason that I actually have all 4 of these moves written up here is because I think Dragon Claw is the most necessary. Well, I think Dragon Claw is necessary for speed. It's definitely the fastest move that we have. If we're using Wing Attack, we're getting it in literally 5 seconds. 5 seconds and we'll have Dragon Claw, which is nuts. So, that one I do think is pretty important to have. Now, Blast Burn is of course the other one, but we do have these other 2 moves, and the reason that I wrote these up here is because if you're like me and you don't have a Blast Burn Charizard, you do have to, if you really want to run Charizard, you do have to try to figure out, how do I run it without Blast Burn? Well, if you're really stuck on that, you have these 2 options, really, Flamethrower or Overheat. Flamethrower is really close in energy to fire, only costing 5 more energy than Blast Burn would, but its damage per energy ratio and its overall damage output isn't quite there. So maybe if you want to keep the speed that Charizard has with Blast Burn, you want to go with Flamethrower. Or Overheat, while it does cost quite a bit more, it does have a huge damage output, and it does have a whopping 2.25 damage per energy ratio. So that ratio is a lot closer to this Blast Burn, which makes it a little bit more efficient. So if you're after speed, I think Flamethrower is a decent substitution for Blast Burn. Or if you're after that efficiency, then Overheat would definitely fit you better. For the purposes of this video though, I am actually going to go with Fire Spin, just to kind of give Charizard that fire type damage that he's meant for. It does actually hit the grass and the bug types for super effective damage. It's also going to hit some of the steel typings that are running out in the electric type area, and it's just going to kind of give us an overall nice damage setup, whereas Wing Attack definitely does have its benefits of getting us to these charge moves a little bit faster, but we are going to start to dwindle our damage down just a little bit. So it does kind of depend on your trade-off which one you want to go with. Personally, I, for this video alone, just go with Fire Spin, Blast Burn, and Dragon Claw as our moveset. Now let's actually look at some shielding situations with our Charizard here. In our first shield situation, we have a 0 versus 0, which is where I don't have any shields, my opponent doesn't have any shields. Basically like a mock-up, like closing type situation. We have a 41.3% win ratio, which is fairly good. I mean, remember that 20% could be roughly dwindled down to a whole typing, even though it's not exactly that, you know, exact 20% of all the participants, but hey, that's 2 full typings, which makes a lot of sense here. We have bug and we have grass that we're really good up against, and then we have a couple more sprinkled in there, which are, you know, just some random Pokemon. So 41.3 makes a lot of sense. Our next shield scenario is a 2 versus 0, where I have 2 shields, my opponent doesn't have 2 shields. We actually end up winning 73.9% of those. And that doesn't sound nearly as high as some of the other Pokemon we've looked at. But all of the fire Pokemon are going to kind of seem like that because the water typing is so huge. There's so many participants in the water typing alone. It's a big chunk. And you'd not be surprised here that we're not actually too worried about that 73.9% that we went up against. If I have complete shield advantage, I want to know which Pokemon are just going to flat out beat me. And here, with the fire typing, we're looking at a lot of water. So the water typing definitely do beat us up in the 2 shields versus 0 shield scenario, which makes a lot of sense. Our next shield scenario is this 0 versus 2, which is where I don't have any shields. My opponent actually has both shields this time. We actually end up winning 14.1% of those, which is pretty nice. Now, it's not like huge, at least we do hit double digits, but a lot of the Pokemon that you're going to see here are bugs and grass. Now, considering that we do have Fire Spin, Dragon Claw, and Blast Burn. If our opponent has 2 full shields, we're basically relying on Fire Spin to kill the opponent before they can hurt us. Well, while I do say bug and grass are the big ones in this area, it's not all bug and all grass. In our first shield scenario here, the 0 versus 0, that was basically all bug and all grass. So that number is way higher than this 14.1. There are some grass types that do beat us. Basically, if they have an immense amount of bulk to begin with, and they are still very quick to fire off their moves, even if it's a neutral damage move, it means a lot more than what our little Fire Spin can kind of dish out on a fast move level. Because they're going to be able to block every Blast Burn in the grass and every Blast Burn when we go up against a bug, it doesn't really work out too great for us. A couple of them in both areas do end up falling, but not all grass and not all bug. Our last shield scenario here is this 2 versus 2, which is where I have 2 shields, my opponent has 2 shields, kind of like the mock-up like opening type situation. We do actually win 53.3, which is not too shabby. And what does that tell us? That actually says that right here, we prefer to open much more than we prefer to close. Statistically, we're gonna win more battles with an opening type situation rather than a closing type situation. So now let's actually get into some matchups with our Charizard. So in every deep dive, I end up taking our subject Pokemon, Charizard today, and I put them up against the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon just to kind of see how they do. So we're actually going to run over to PvPoke for this. We're going to build our Charizard here with Fire Spin, Blast Burn, Dragon Claw. I do have a custom group already set up under multi-battle with all of the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon. If you've seen any of the recent deep dives on the Rainbow Cup, you kind of already know how this is all set up. So then we're just going to hit battle after giving 1 shield versus 1 shield for the most evenness of the playing field. And you can kind of see here, Fortress, Jumpluff, Shuckle, Suicune, we do actually end up beating 3 of the Suicunes. But with there being a total of 6 Suicune movesets, since it's basically we beat 3 and we lose to 3, I do count that as a loss, as it's not just a clear-cut win. We don't win the majority of the Suicune matchups. We can actually beat the Lapras and the Dugong, which is insane. Lapras and Dugong are super, super big players in the water type. Lapras for its huge amount of bulk, Dugong for its huge amount of stat product. I mean, those are big ones to actually win up against, even though they're really close battles. I mean, they're great to win. Then we get into our losses here, which are Tentacruel, Mantine, the other Suicune builds. Then we have Lantern and Azumarill also rounding out the water types there. And those aren't really a surprise. And then this Tentacruel, I do have it starred here because I want you to keep that in mind, because whenever we get to this star here, I want to bring that up. Speaking of which, let's actually get into our countering section. So basically this section is, if it's green, that's what we want to be focusing our attention on with our Charizard. If it's red, that's actually what you want to bring to the table to actually combat a Charizard if you're fearing that a lot of people are going to bring it. Let's actually get over back into PvPoke. We're going to build it. Fire Spin, Blast Burn, Dragon Claw, just like before. 1 shield versus 1 shield. The entire Rainbow Cup. We're going to hit battle here. As you can see, our win percentage is a 45.7 with a 1v1 shield scenario. So makes a lot of sense there. So our first typing here is the bug typing, and I have all of them. And as you can see, we win all of them. In the 1 versus 1, we literally can beat every single bug type Pokemon, which is great. Not a single bug type actually gives us any problems. Next, moving on to the grass types, all of them. And you can see literally every single grass type is no problem for us. Executor is the hardest matchup. As you can see with Executor using Confusion, it does actually give us a run for our money. Only 10 HP remaining on the Charizard after we finish. But that's not too bad, we still end up winning. Now moving on to the electric typing. This is where we start to get into some rocky water. Now moving on to the electric typing, this is where it starts to get a little weird. So we have 4 wins written up there. That's Zapdos, Magnemite, Magneton, and Ampharos. It is a tie up against the Jolteon, and then we start to fall from there. So Raikou beats us, Electrode, Flaffy, Chinchou, Lantern, Raichu, and Electabuzz are all losses for us. Next, moving on to the fire types, Charizard actually has an interesting stance. He's not like Magcargo, where Magcargo has just like a really good hold on all of the fire types. Charizard's kind of in the middle here, so it's roughly 50%. As you can see, Ponyta, Entei, Rapidash, you know, a lot of these Pokemon that really just don't have a lot of speed end up falling here. Arcanine, Charmeleon, Houndoom, Moltres, and Typhlosion are all ties. Typhlosion makes the most sense as a tie, considering it basically has the same exact moves, same exact stats, except it has a couple of variances with like Shadow Claw. I wonder if that's what it's using. Yeah, Shadow Claw, Blast Burn. It actually has to utilize Overheat, but you know, being that it's basically a carbon copy with a couple of changes, makes a lot of sense that we tie. Then you can see Ninetales, then you can see Charizard, Ho-Oh, and Magcargo are all losses there. So it's not really that we lose 50% of these, it's that we roughly win 50% and then we're either tying or losing the other half. But, I mean, in general, the fire type isn't too big of an issue if you don't care about trading. I mean, in some scenarios, trading a Pokemon is okay, I guess, but I'd much rather not trade if I didn't have to, but hey, I mean, you can kind of see there we do end up having a wishy-washy type effect with the fire types here. And last but not least, we do have the water typing, and as you can see, we have one win, which is Tentacruel. Yeah, so even though we lose to Tentacruel here, we actually have a win against Tentacruel here, but I just want you to know that it could go either way. It depends on which build they end up using, because the one that I ended up using in the top 10, you can actually see it's winning there. If it utilizes Acid Spray, Tentacruel can actually beat you. But if it doesn't, then it kind of has some problems. It really just depends on what build people are using for Tentacruel, whether you're going to beat it or not. I mean, you guys have heard me preach about Acid Spray before. It doesn't necessarily show up in the simulations like you'd think it would, so that's kind of why we lose here, because I built that Tentacruel to have a, you know, a moveset that I wanted, whereas PvPoke is prioritizing different moves whenever it auto-generates this battle. So keeping that in mind, we do have a tie against Cloyster. Lapras actually ties here, so you can kind of see that the moveset that I built for Lapras, Charizard actually stomps it, whereas in this moveset generation, it actually ends up tying. Slowpoke, Seadra, Octillery, Quillfish, yeah, you can just kind of imagine every single one of these is a loss. All of these are losses, 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 losses. Amistar and Ammonite rounding out the worst possible matchup for Charizard there, both utilizing the rock type damage, which is quad double super duper effective. That's going to be what I'm going to say. I'm not even going to talk about 2 times or 4 times anymore. I'm just going to say super duper effective. How about that? Any of these water typings that you see here, like Lapras and Dugong, could end up being losses. The moveset that I personally built for them shows that you can win up against them, but it really just kind of depends on which movesets people are prioritizing for their Charizard and for their water types, depending how that match goes. So that is actually it for Charizard today, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Always remember that if you have a deep dive idea, you can put that down in the comments below. I will put it in the spreadsheet and we'll tally it up and we'll try to get to it as soon as possible. Otherwise, let's see, today I'm going to be working on the water type video, so expect that out before the end of the day. And then I'm also still working on the regionals video and the Nightmare Cup video. I'd like to ask, before I get too deep into editing those, do you guys prefer a longer format video, even though it's going to be like an hour long for 5 rounds worth of a tournament? Do you guys prefer a long 5-round video or 2 like shorter videos? Like if I split it in half, I do like explanation of my team and thought process in the first like little bit, and then show 2 rounds, and then do the last 3 rounds in another video. Which format do you guys prefer? Because it's literally, I mean, I can edit it both ways. It doesn't matter. Literally, I can just cut it in half. So, I don't know. I see people say like, "Oh, this video's too long. I can't watch it." You know, I see that. But then again, I see people like, "Oh my God, you should just put 2 parts together. It's just one big video." So, you know, whichever way you guys want, just let me know down there. Anyways, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Always remember that if you like to like videos, you can do that. But if you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below. And until our next video, I will catch you then.